Mr. David? Mr. Haas?
Here.
Ms. Nunn?
Here.
Ms. Shasta?
Here.
Mr. Slack?
Here.
Ms. Smith?
Here.
Ms. Walters?
Hmm.
Mr. Wright?
Okay, has everybody had an opportunity to read the minutes? And if so, can we have a motion on the minutes?
Second.
I have a question about number 6 on page 4. Was that because the city was waiting for construction funding before construction couldn't begin? It's just a typo error, I believe.
Could begin.
Good. Page 4.
Item for the second sentence, the second to the last word. Okay, so would we like to change our motion? Those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Those abstained? Okay, so Nancy abstained because she wasn't here. She's got an approval of 5 with the correction. Okay, we've had one change to the agenda in that we're going to discuss the 99E tunnel, which is a discussion that will be led by, or a report led by Don Slack, because he has to leave early for another meeting. And then we have a couple of guests in the audience, so I think we will hear from them before we move into what really becomes rollover standard business. So if there are no objections to the change, going once, going twice. Okay, Don, the 99E tunnel.
Did you say you were going to do comments first?
No, I'm going to do the tunnel first, and then I'm going to do comments.
Because I don't have to leave until about 6:40.
Okay.
That'll be fine. But I'll
That's
do it.
okay.
The 99E tunnel, I really didn't need to have this time, but Nancy Kretschauer wanted us to put it on as a rolling thing. And I already mentioned it, I think, a couple of meetings ago, but we're the subcommittee of the design committee of Main Street Oregon City is working on gateways, and in fact they're working on gateway structures that will announce the entrance to our to Oregon City and the historic downtown Oregon City. And they'll be coming forward with some. In fact, I took the new city manager down, and he gave me a whole earful about gateways. He's pretty into that, but we got a committee with as much passion as he's got, looking at some different kinds of structure options for announcing that you're in Oregon City. But my position has always been, you can do all you want to put fancy structures up, but until we clean up the really dingy-looking tunnel complex, which you view either going south or north in our downtown. It was built in 1936, and I don't think ODOT's done anything to it since 1936. I say that facetiously, but it is pretty sad. So the subcommittee from the Main Street program forwarded a letter of listing the concerns to Nancy Kretschauer, with the idea that Nancy, because the city deals with ODOT and we don't, would be the best to submit that to ODOT. In fact, John Lewis has had, along with us, some meetings with ODOT and with the railroad, and there's all kinds of. We actually went back to some documents that were written in 1936 to find out whose responsibility in different elements of that tunnel complex. It was kind of an interesting exercise. But anyway, we have submitted a formal letter to Nancy, which she's going to put a cover letter on and submit to ODOT. And then I think the way Nancy and I had left it when I met with her last week is that I'm going to kind of be the lead because staff is busy with ODOT. But John, who's already enthusiastically helped us with the project, is going to kind of work with me on that. And then Nancy wanted me to, put that kind of as a rolling, thing on our, she wanted me to update, the TAC as to what was happening, which I already had told you a little bit about, I think, a couple of months ago, but anyway, to put that kind of, what's happening with that, for us to look at it each time.
Excellent.
And then if, while I'm on the thing that looks like downtown parking is the next,
Go ahead.
Pearl Street, okay, but let me do the downtown.
Your item is downtown parking.
And then, I did get an email this week from Scott Archer. It says, the planning plan implementation, and this is a downtown parking, plan, is scheduled for the July 13th City Commission work session. Staff will be seeking direction from the City Commission on implementation of the plan and the City Commission's recommendations. So that's the latest. I mean, this is kind of on the agenda to be a constant reminder, so that we don't have another study that we dust off a few years from now on the shelf, because the city's got plenty of those, and I'm determined to make sure that we do something with this. I'm done with my part. I apologize, but I am going to be. Oh, there's Sean. Good. I'm going to be talking about Main Street at a town hall meeting that Martha Schrader's having.
That's great.
At 7, so that's why I'm leaving.
Excellent. Busy people. Okay. Next on our agenda is Don Belshaw, who is our traffic issue.
I would like to mention the traffic light at 14th and 99W. My wife had a very serious accident there 1 month ago today.
99W or 99E?
Excuse me.
Okay. I'm confused easily. We're sorry. Is he okay?
Yeah, but it's kind of a miracle. I guess we have a safe car. Is one thing I can say about it. But those lights, the lights along 99 and the left turn onto 14th Street.
Okay.
She was headed north on 99, and Hummer turned in front of her, and so I investigated afterwards, and these lights are all screwed up down there. The green arrow pointing left onto 14th Street goes for 3 seconds, and at that point, then the cars that are going north have a green light also. And of course it flashes yellow. And the way this accident happened apparently was that the person that was in the Hummer was making a left turn. And the green arrow was on for 3 seconds, and the car behind him honked, and so he took off. And he then plowed into our car. He left a pretty nasty mess. Nobody was hurt seriously, but it was like a whole mess.
John,
It is an ODOT facility. I don't know much about the timing plans, but we can look at it. I just asked Kathy if she could follow it up because I want to make sure I understand what you're talking about, so we can look into that.
This is the aftermath of it. This is what happens when you travel with my own business.
Where do you want it, or you want to give it to me?
This is the start. I got several pictures of that. And I guess it was case to do it. The car's traveling on 99 going 30 miles an hour. I believe that speed of that. Supposedly. About 40, 45.
This is construction down here.
It's back and forth. It's just back and forth all the time between green light and flashing yellow. I sat there watching for an hour.
Well, but the flashing yellow means you can go if It's safe to
With
carry,
caution.
exactly. The second time, we should time to record.
Yeah, doesn't seem quite right, 3 seconds.
And coming back, I avoided completely. I was sad, and I didn't know why until a month ago today. I avoided that area down there.
So again, your wife was headed north on 99E,
Right.
and the
Hummer was the first car in the line to make a left turn. And then, and the car, the driver of the Hummer told me that he was, the green arrow was on, and then the car behind him pumped it. So he took off to beat that and already turned left.
well, we would have to look at that. I have not been ever heard of a problem there, nor have I noticed a problem there. So we
Okay.
I stood there for an hour, and I saw 3 totally close accidents. And,
Is that the new signal?
yeah.
Yes.
It's the flashing amber, flashing green, it flashes green for 3 seconds, and then it changes to amber, and it flashes for, I don't know, I had the notes and I sent it to the insurance company, but it flashed for about, maybe 15 or 20 seconds, I suppose, something like that. And then,
you said you were at 14,
14.
Well,
so that's not the
That's not the new
that's the
one.
old signal.
No, this-
12 is the
the
new one.
new one's 12.
Yeah, there was always a signal there. It is a brand new.
Yes, that's true. It always has a signal there, but this is the new style that has the flashing amber. And on top of that, there's an island there, which makes it even worse. There's way too much congestion for that type of a signal there. You know, see, there's an island, the island for the new, where the new Esplanade or whatever you call it down there, and that stretches from what's the next street up? 14,
13.
12 probably.
Well, 14th is
Isn't
where
that the
the
new street that goes
WC
through?
station is.
Okay,
That's the new one.
so that island goes from 14 to 12, and they have trees along the center. The trees didn't have leaves on at that point, but still, it's just.
There's a lot more channelization now than there ever was before with the community. So, in some senses, that helps channelize traffic. Those flashing arrow signals are sometimes confusing for people, and especially when they're new.
But they're an incredible invention.
But they're an incredible.
Because they give you the opportunities when there is not a lot of traffic to.
That's true. That is very true. Some of this is great, but not that one. There's way too much activity there at that intersection. I don't know what you can do to change it, but I counted 14 cars were lined up with the flashing arrow. Of course, every chance they got, they go.
Yeah, I think, well, one of those things is I don't think we'll have much opportunity to do the changing. It'll be up to ODOT and because it's their jurisdiction and but we need to notify them.
If there truly is
There's
a
a
problem,
problem, yeah.
with inappropriate overlap of signalization, trying to bring that to their attention.
Exactly.
They got hundreds of signals, so they may miss that as well.
I would think that a 3-second signal will give you a false sense of security. You wouldn't be expecting the yellow to come up so quickly, so you wouldn't be thinking that you need to yield. Because that doesn't give anybody really any time to react saying, oh, I'm going to go. The expectation is that you have a clear go-ahead for more than 3 seconds, and then all of a sudden you're being told you have to proceed with caution. So I think that could be an issue.
It's 14, because 14, that turning movement, there's a lot of turning
Yes.
movement right there.
There's a lot
So,
of,
that seems a little short.
it does.
Yeah, most people always do that.
Okay,
Do you know what time she had her accident?
Yes, it's 12:30.
In the afternoon?
Yeah. Midday. And on top of that, the 76 station, it was Mother's Day weekend, and they had their sign out that says roses for sale. So they just added the confusion.
Yeah. Yes.
okay.
We got your contact information.
if you'd step over and give that to Kathy so that, we don't need to announce it, record it for the world.
The insurance company we are with is actually investigating. And I don't know how far they are with that.
That often drives a lot of our, that can drive, changes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dawn. We're awfully glad she's okay. And we have a Mr. Tao here from Concrete Posts. Yes. You want to come up and tell us why you're here and what can we do for you? We're here, this is the Transportation Advisory Committee, so do you have a transportation or traffic issue?
I do have my company, the México Concrete Pole, fortificado con Riva, inside the concrete pole. It's, I fabricate el Bendy Riva, I fabricate el concrete pole. I do have all the inside. Right now, you have 14 years certificate on.
Okay, so you got a product that you're showing us, and this is the specs on the various different poles that you have.
Yes, I have the different poles for parking lot, for neighborhood, for traffic light, snow pane, the poles for river guarantee 50 years.
Okay.
50 years. It's this for traffic light, I also in Oregon, and traffic light que tú has done. I do have guarantee el pool que no bendy, no road. Yeah. I only fabrication. Another company I can do a making pool. I don't look monopoly the everything. My business is self-fabrication, a concrete pole.
Okay.
So,
John, what would be the appropriate course avenue for Mr. Tao to get his product before the appropriate parties of the city, so if they could use these, they would know about them?
Right. So if you can leave your product information and your business card with us, we can look at those and compare them to our regular specifications to establish whether or not it's anything that we use on a routine basis. Rebar in variety of kinds of poles is often used. Typically, we don't see a manufacturer who manufactures just that one component. Usually, we'll specify a pole and a configuration. Usually, it meets an ODOT standard. So I don't know if your product meets an ODOT standard, but for signal poles, for light poles, all those things have to meet an ODOT standard, and that's what we specify as our minimum standards. So, you know, if you're on an ODOT approved list, more than likely when we have a project that calls up a signal pole or a street light, we don't use rebar on our street signs necessarily, unless there's some odd condition. But those are the scenarios that I can think of that we use those things. So if you want to give me your information, and we can take a quick look and give you a call and let you know whether or not, do you know whether or not it meets the ODOT standard or not? Okay. So that I guess is the best alternative that I can think of. Okay. Okay.
I do have registration in CCI en el Pedro, to have my business registration in Oregon. I do have all legal in CCI, and Doom, I do have everything correct.
Excellent.
Yeah, you are correct. Right now I do have a one process for certificado company. But I need waiting for 90 days. Le dije que hay en ahora. This is Don Sherman, que es el engineer de working for my company. He said, es lo que he waiting. He said for el 20 arriba. Así que hay 20 días is son riba fabricantes de oro in different shops. He said, what to do if you bring this kind of riba together? Some company here say, I'm not going to do it like this. Yeah, I know before the company, I think you can do it like this. He said, no. So people looking contracted for me for $9 per hour, you know. Sorry.
Very good. Well, we'll look at it, and if the city can use your products, they'll get a hold of you. We appreciate you letting us know you're in the
It's
neighborhood.
very expensive. My employer is not very expensive porque hay 20 arriba.
Uh-huh.
Lo más difícil.
Excellent.
Thank you.
We appreciate you coming and taking the time to be with us this evening.
Okay, thank you.
I'll try and get back in touch with you in a week.
Okay.
Okay, or somebody will. Okay.
Okay, and
For any kind of food, not really like inside or particular go outside, everything.
Thank you.
and we've done downtown parking, so that brings us to light rail to Oregon
Did you
City.
skip Pearl? I'm sorry.
Oh,
'cause I
I
skipped
did.
Pearl tonight.
It got lost in my notes.
We did them all.
Thank you. Pearl Street traffic concerns.
Yeah, okay. So this is mine, I think.
So I think this is the packet.
We know about last minute scan.
Yeah, you did.
So, last meeting, Tony had sent me the staff report for the 221 Malala development, and I hadn't had a chance to read it, and so I asked that we put it off till today's meeting, and Kathy included it in the package as well. So I'm not sure how many of you looked at it, but it looks to me like the bottom line is the original development and the parking standards that came out of the original development are what is there today, plus maybe a couple of parking stalls. I went out and counted and parking stalls and just kind of got an assessment on what's going on in the parking lot there. And so just first of all, to confirm that they have as many parking stalls as they were required to have. And the original development actually proposed a couple extra parking stalls. So they were allowed to have, actually they could have qualified for 77 parking stalls. They have 79 parking stalls with the credit that they get because they're on the bus route. So they are within that standard. They have the appropriate amount of ADA stalls. They've actually overmarked for carpool stalls. And so the site that's there and the number of stalls that they have is great, is what was intended. The new standard allows for them to count on-street parking stalls, which at the time of the development, it didn't require that. So what's going wrong? Well, I think what's going wrong is that the one other condition that I haven't gotten to read, talk about making planners nervous, you just start talking about their own site and how they're operating their own site. They start backpedaling, looking for all those loopholes. So, but I'm joking about that because they were very helpful with some of the information that I needed. But there's one condition that says the applicant indicated that the parking lots would not be used for the parking of storage of vehicles, materials, or trucks used in conducting business, the business that they are in. And it looks to me like there's quite a few city vehicles, state vehicles, and then there's the Clackamas County Soil and Water Conservation building in there. So they've got somewhere between 10 to 15 vehicles that I think stay parked there that are in addition to their business traffic and their employee traffic. So that's, now, if they had been, at the time, if they'd have been allowed to use this on-street parking, then that would have even reduced that parking lot even further. So if you kind of look at it now from the perspective of, well, that's extra parking spaces for them, then there's not as much of a difference between what's going on now and what was originally planned. But I think where this is going to boil down is that they've just got too much utilization of business vehicles in that customer service and employee parking. So I know when I talked to Tony about this originally, he also indicated that the city had an option to use some parking across the street, across Malala at Mitchell's, but that wasn't as convenient as they like. So, and I don't know that the state has that same agreement nor the county, but there is some option for off-site parking that I think maybe they need to pursue. And I'm just not sure how we want to, if this committee wants to send them a letter, or if we just want to have a staff conversation to ask our planning director to talk to or I could talk to the owner of the property as well, because I know he kind of deals with parking issues on that site from time to time.
So where's the off-site parking?
It's across the street, across Malala, behind Mitchell's, the Mexican, I think that's how it's pronounced.
Because the state is parking back in there too, behind that restaurant that's closed.
The Oregon City Grill in that area, yeah. I don't exactly know where they were talking about, but both planners.
Right behind it, in front of that house, is a construction house.
They may be using some of that property already for that, but today when they counted, there were 7 to 10 state vehicles parked in that lot. And there were 7 when they counted, but their thinking was by the end of the day there'd be a few more in the lot. Plus, all 4 of our vehicles were there, and we're not sure yet. We didn't ask the question of the county, but my sense is we're somewhere in the range of 10 to 15 vehicles. So I'm comfortable having a conversation with the property owner and tenants if need be, but I don't know if you want to take it any further than that, if we want to send a letter on that.
Just encourage particularly those people that have a large number of vehicles, when they have auxiliary parking, to use that to ease the burden would be a nice, friendly community thing to do.
Okay.
Well, it was kind of interesting because I think I was the first one who said, how come something doesn't work? I mean, you've got a relatively new development, which hopefully if they follow whatever the parking guidelines were, so that, I guess that maybe is part of the missing link, is the fact that you've got double parking from the perspective that you've got employees parking there, and then there's vehicles that are company or county or city or whatever. So, one person might drive there and then drive another vehicle away, but at some point in time, there's 2 vehicles for one person in reality, which, I mean, that's backwards from what we're trying to do. And obviously, I think, I agree that we should really, I think, fairly strongly talk to them, all of the parties, because, I mean, here we're dealing with neighbors who have a legitimate issue, and the people who are charged with making sure this doesn't happen in other places may be part of the...
Yeah, my only thought is that, there's going to be tenants in there, new tenants and old, and I guess my feeling is I think it'd be a little better to have something in a letter format that doesn't necessarily have to be signed by the, I don't know how we typically do correspondence that generates from this group. Do we write it or draft it and have the chair sign it? Or
We used to have Mary sign it. We don't want to put our names on it.
Okay.
We usually draft it, yeah. Okay, so, I mean, I think it'd be worthwhile to draft it, that way we get it in the file and get it to the property owner, and, we'll be able to actually, resurrect what we asked them to do. And it could still be a gentle kind of encouragement letter, doesn't have to be a you shall letter, I don't believe.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Okay.
We want to strongly encourage.
So can we just draft that and maybe get it to Mary, and then if it's okay with Mary and looking
Now,
good,
if
then
you
you'll
could
sign it.
get something, are you around on Friday?
I don't know if we
Yes,
can
no?
do it that quickly.
Might be next week.
Okay. That's okay. I'm gonna be in town. It's a furlough day.
Well, my sense is it's not, again, one of those
So
critical
when we get
items. We'll
something
try to get it
together, call it me and we'll make arrangements to,
There were a couple of neighbors that gave the contact information. It would be good for them to know.
Right, Mr., the one that did the report.
There were several neighbors that gave it, whoever the chief contact is.
Robert Bundy was the,
Actually had, one of the families come in and ask about what happened with that. So I think that
Was it the Bundy's?
it was a young family who lived down 2 houses from Meloria. And, they said that they signed a petition, they wanted to know what happened.
Oh.
So I'm kind of wondering if maybe I should include everybody on the petition?
Sure.
If a letter seems appropriate, then I'll consider that, otherwise.
Otherwise I could talk
just
to
so
them.
that they know that we're not forgetting.
I brought it up at our last neighborhood meeting, and we talked about it. But we don't meet again until July, so,
I wonder,
The neighborhood?
the neighborhood meeting.
Okay.
This was the first one that mentioned it, weren't you? Weren't you the first one to bring that up? The whole
Yes.
thing? Yeah.
Yes. So, yeah.
letter probably ought to also state what, we're still planning to move forward with the striping, we did a little paving along there, so,
So we did do a speed study, or the traffic counting, and,
we used old data, I reported old data, that we had there from 2008, I think.
I have a request in for traffic counts. Every month I ask how the traffic counts coming. And I'm pretty much being told, why are we doing traffic counts there? And I'm pushing back. So I'm gonna get them.
I thought we were gonna do that, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, just to kind of confirm, because I think maybe I'm a little bit confused, the letter is gonna encourage people to park, across the street. Do we wanna prioritize parking so that maybe the fleet vehicles would be housed, there first, or that employees would park there first? Is there some kind of priority, or, I mean, you know, if I was receiving the letter, I'd say, well, that's great, but maybe it doesn't really apply to me.
The letter should go to the building owner, who would need to work with his tenants to, meet this, I don't know if it's necessarily a condition, but it's item, it's that paragraph that talks about use of the park, or non-use of the parking lot for business-related vehicles.
And you might let them just deal with that however they can, because as a landlord, you know, you may have tenants who, for security reasons, want those vehicles that are left overnight on the premises rather than away, so. Let them tell the employees, or decide to tell the employees go park someplace else or whatever.
I think the only thing, and I mean, even enforcement of that particular requirement is a challenge, and to have to do that, I mean, it's not, you know, going to be one of those things. I know that's, you're going to get one big correction and then it's going to slowly, as tenants change.
The weather gets worse.
Yeah. So I can't. I just think it would help, and it would be
Okay, so
responsive.
Kathy, you'll draft something and let me know, and we'll make arrangements.
I can help Kathy too with that. Maybe.
Thank you, John. Thank you,
You're
John.
welcome. Thank you.
Okay, and now we're at light rail.
Okay.
There were materials in your packet regarding that, wasn't there?
Yes.
Light rail. I think there were three handouts. Yes, that was a meeting. The one thing she wanted to make sure that you were aware of was, the high-speed rail survey questions. And I don't know if any of you went to the light rail open house.
Yep, I both did.
Okay. She was encouraging you to pull this out. And it can be done online. I didn't dare.
But these are two
That's
different,
not,
these
yeah,
are
these
different
are two
things.
different items, right?
Yeah, high-speed rail is the Amtrak that runs through Oregon City, and the light rail is the commuter rail from downtown.
That's true.
Portland.
Okay.
So the light rail to Oregon City was a discussion about having maybe a project that we might be working on to move forward the idea and let TriMet and Metro and those regional players know that Oregon City's still out here to the south. And
Well, and we want to hopefully plan for where it might come, so that we can plan around that for the building and development that we want to have happen in the north end down there.
So, I know Nancy is very familiar with this because as I go to the Metro website, I see there's a lot of activity with this long-range planning through Metro. And Don, as I started clicking on videos and looking at things, I realized you probably know a lot more about this than I do because you were at one of their training sessions, I noticed, and they had you on video right there. I said, I know that.
That's good.
Yeah. And you asked lots of questions too, so I'm guessing you have all the answers to this. But the good news is Metro's regional plan for high capacity transit is got a fair amount of history to it, and they've completed their plan. I didn't make copies of it, but I did print off some things, and I have been kind of getting up to speed with that. It's clear to me that there's a lot of thought and a lot of regional thought on this high-speed corridor, and the various locations around and what priority we might fall into. And the one thing that I learned is there's some near-term priorities and some next phase regional priorities, and then there's developing regional priorities and regional vision corridors. So those are the 4 different phases, and Oregon City lands heavily into the next phase regional priority corridor. So the projects that were listed under the near-term regional priority corridor are Portland City Center to Gresham, and so that's a new route out to Gresham. It's the southerly side of Gresham. Then there's the Portland City Center to Sherwood corridor, and then the Beaverton to Wilsonville, and none of those corridors have been built yet, right? And then in the next phase, that's when it starts talking about Oregon City by way of 205, both north and south, and by way of 99E. So there's 3 legs that actually are planned to terminate in Oregon City or go through Oregon City if you're talking 205. So that was, all that was all learning for me. It was good to see that we were on, pretty much on track with. On track. The other thing that they included was, and I haven't completely gotten up to speed. I did talk to TriMet. I talked to Young Park, he's also another player that I saw in some of the regional planning effort that goes into this, but he works for TriMet. And I noticed Tony Mendoza, who's actually the gentleman who presented that instructional piece that you went through for Metro, and he's pretty involved in this regional transportation plan as well. But I talked to Young Park, who referred me to another gentleman who has been slow to return calls. He did finally leave me a message yesterday that said that he was going on vacation but could be helpful. So first, I'd hope to have something here tonight, because are we meeting at all during the summer? Have you made that determination?
No.
You don't want to meet
At
at
this
all?
point in time, we don't have, we've met in the summer if we've had like a work committee to do a particular project. At this point, we have not identified a summer project.
I guess that's what I'm wondering, if that, work committee find a time on the calendar that meeting might make sense, that we could get those regional players or, from Metro or TriMet here. I also when talking to Nancy a little bit more about this, trying to get up to speed with how you would pursue something like this, because it's definitely long-term planning. She was telling me about some things that happened years ago, and she mentioned Dan Fowler's name and the fact that he had been involved in some of the kind of things that we're talking about. Is how would you get rail into Oregon City? And I was asking him, if he recalled any of that, and he did, and he thought maybe he could find some. He also thought Metro might have some of that, so I'd still like to connect with them to see if we can't resurrect some of that information. But it feels to me like something we could set up for a workshop in July or maybe even August to get maybe kicked off into the next, I guess you start back up in September, is that right? So to me, it's either that or we do things via email and we try and set something up for that first or second meeting of the year. It's kind of up to you.
I think I'd rather do it like in a workshop and get people together. It tends to say we are really interested. Who all wants to be part of that?
I would definitely like to be, but I am leaving a week from Monday for 2 months. So you don't have to. I can watch it on the TV.
I think a really important thing for this group to also recognize is the time frames that they're looking at for these projects. For instance, I think there's how many are in Tier 1, 3 projects?
Yeah, for the next phase.
And it might take 10 years to do one of those projects.
Right.
So
I think
when you
I think we realize that, but one of the things in the downtown that is the driving this is we're looking at some significant development, we hope, in the short term, being 10 years. What we don't want to do is we would, even if we leave a line on the map that shows where the light rail will come in 20 years, you can plan around that. But if we build this out and then don't make room for light rail, we're already congested downtown.
Oh no, I totally agree with you.
Well, that's what my point is.
And I think this is an opportunity to recognize that there's a long time frame here. Mm-hmm. We're in Tier 2, but maybe there are things that we can do in this community that could elevate the projects and get us higher up in Tier 2, so that, or even when they start looking at this in another 5 or 8 years, that hey, maybe we have some scores and extra points, and we might be able to get up into the next tier. So those are things that our planners need to look at on how we can increase our points, and what projects we can maybe do, or densities that we need to increase, or there's all sorts of things that we can do. But what can we do as a community to help increase our point spread for the region? Because we are a regional terminus. It's important that we have that connection.
One of the other pieces, it's pretty interesting. We all talk not so, or at least I do, not so hot about Metro sometimes, but they've got really what they call potential methods to reach targets. So for some of the local actions, they talk about developing corridor problem statement, defining the corridor extent, assess the corridor against system expansion targets, create ridership development plan, land use, access mode and function of high capacity transit. So there's definitely some things that they're telling local jurisdictions that they should be doing. And what those mean exactly, they provide definitions, but that would be, I think, good kickoff would be to have Metro or TriMet kind of help us figure out, well, what do those local actions really mean for us? And so I guess that's the update. Sounds like midsummer target date would be good. So we'll work for that soon, and then kind of find out some calendar dates that might work for this committee.
Very good. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for from afar, I'm gonna watch.
Okay.
And,
Curb extension signage for bicycle safety. This was Nancy's concern. We tabled till this month because she wasn't with us this month.
Yeah, I know this has come up several times. Those curb extensions, basically when the curb follows a certain path and then it comes out on roads. I do know some bicycle riders who have had some accidents because they weren't anticipating those curbs coming out. Might have been somewhat getting dark, rain, traffic. There's a lot of things that they have to pay attention to when they're riding, and sometimes you're not necessarily looking on the ground for curbs to be moving into your path. So on the second page of the handout, there's a little an example of how you might want to mark it. And one thing that doesn't show up very well is at the base of the curb is a reflector. It's actually on top and on the side of the curb. And those reflectors help also to create a visual cue, particularly in less than optimum conditions when it's a little bit dark. It just gives people another visual cue that the line that you're riding on just moved out. I don't know, Jonathan, you're nodding your head. Do you have any experience with this?
I think that's a very inexpensive, easy fix to put a little reflector on the curb. And you don't have to worry for snow on the road. It's not like a line that gets covered up. It's something that can be done fairly easily by our public works. So I think that type of low-tech, low-cost fix is really more appropriate for something like this.
Well, it helps with snow on the road, and some reason they did it because they don't know it's there. Because it's under the snow.
Yeah. So I think this rate is elevated slightly. It's not going to get covered up by snow. It's relatively inexpensive product. The type of things that I think I can't speak for public works, but I
like those.
imagine
We love those.
but I can see from a bicyclist viewpoint that curb extensions when you're not expecting them are potential hazards.
Yes. Have you seen a detail or recommendation for spacing or layout? Have you ever seen anything like that? Some of these pictures we actually got. Nancy provided the first two, and the first one, as you can clearly see, is where Hood had the accident, and it's in downtown Oregon City. And then she provided the second one.
I've had more pictures, but they look pretty much the same.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
they're
the rest of it we got from Gresham. Just kind of showing curb extensions and bike lanes and how. But have you ever seen a detail or specifications on?
There's a new draft guideline put out by AASHTO. Some of those they're guidelines, so I take them with a grain of salt, and we need to really look at each situation and see what's going to work for that situation. I think Nancy's recommendation for a reflector in certain locations, I think, is well warranted.
They do have them. I noticed they started putting them in Portland too. Similar to the pictures that on this page, the horizontal, the diagonal stripes, and then a little reflector on the curb itself.
And the diagonal stripes I'm finding are more when the corner curve is telling you which way to go.
Okay.
I don't know if I've really seen them at a curb extension itself. That's you're still trying to keep people going, and that right there is telling people to move into a certain direction. and they're really, I mean, you follow the lines typically on those.
That's not how they're being used, they're all over the place, where I took this was in Beaverton, and then, in Portland, where they have a lot of the bike, thoroughfares, they're using the same treatment, and they're not to direct people around the corners or anything, it's really a visual, warning signal to call out those curb extensions, because they have been installing, quite a few for ADA access, and, it kind of conflicts with a lot of the bicycle, traffic that seems to just go straight through.
And we don't have a ton of curb extensions. We're starting to build more.
Yeah, we see more and more of them, and even in some of the neighborhoods where, we're seeing them.
Rose that one, you just
Yeah.
go down the road, all of a sudden it's up there on the road.
That one shouldn't be there anyway, but, in my opinion. You mean the one on South End? It's on South End, that's Road.
That just came up was on South End Road, and then we're seeing them kind of become more popular.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they're good for pedestrians, but, I know a couple of people now that have had broken collarbones in Oregon City from bumping into these. So, I was just thinking it might be an inexpensive way, maybe.
Definitely, I think, I'd push back a little harder on the signage, and especially in areas where signage is not real practical, like Main Street. Main Street, I don't know if you've noticed, but it's just loaded with a lot of visual things to look at. I mean, it's you can hit a pedestrian in Main Street, I would think, pretty easily, depending on how the parking is and what kind of vehicles are parked down there. So, putting a delineator like this on Main Street wouldn't work very well, in my opinion, but maybe on South End it might. But I would definitely like the idea of the reflectors. MUTCD calls for more of the striping option, where you would place a stripe around an object that just kind of shows up in the parking strip. But they're, it'd be a painted stripe. We're struggling with painting the no parking striping and the, fire lane striping. It's just this year we're going to be, I don't know how we're going to get everything done in our short little summer, because we just can't get all those things done. So I worry a little bit about requirements like striping, but the glued on reflector buttons would be fine.
Yeah, that's what they have, just under the little sign there. Can't really see it. I have some other pictures that show it a little better, but,
the other areas that I wonder about are, like 7th, for instance, isn't a bike corridor. It's not marked. We actually divert traffic off of 7th, bike traffic off of 7th. It's signed that way. That's not to say people don't still use it, but, we've got curb extensions on 7th as well. And my thought is that those bicyclists that are using 7th know that you stay in the travel lane. You're not trying to, it's channelized such that to go outside the travel lane into the parking strip it doesn't make sense really there. So we probably, wouldn't be where we would start. We'd probably hit the ones like South End
That would be
first.
a perfect place for a reflector.
On South End?
Well, just anytime you have a curb extension, it's a cheap. Move it on there, even if it's not a designated bike route, I wouldn't think would be very much to announce the prevention type deal.
I guess what I'm saying is, if we're going to prioritize, we're probably going to, pick the bike corridors first. Because I'm. It's not going to happen next month, probably. We're going to have to take them slowly but surely, and kind of just hit those as we can.
It might be the case too that, maybe I could check with the city of Portland to see if they have developed some guidelines, because they've been probably more aggressive on promoting bicycle, safety and usage around Portland. Maybe they have some information. I don't think this is, again, a high priority item, but I was hoping that we could do something that would be effective and cost effective as well. Just as we're thinking about making these changes, if we could develop some measures and then start kind of working on areas that maybe would benefit. I don't intend to weigh you guys down with a lot of extra work, but I think just in general, it would be good to think about, even just establishing where would be the preferred bike routes, and then trying to figure out how we would then promote that so that people are taking the safest routes and also the routes that are most appropriate for bicycle traffic. So maybe it's part of a larger kind of thought process.
Isn't there a bike route already? That's what I thought.
In our TSC, we have designated bike routes, but again, that would probably be what I would flip open and hand off and say, go get these buttons installed in these locations wherever there's curb extensions. Do you have any sense of what color buttons they're using? Because
they just said white.
White, yeah, that's what I would have picked, but I was curious if you had.
Let me see if I can find out a little bit more about it. I appreciate the discussion. It's been a while, and hopefully we can figure out what's best to do.
Well, I should almost plus a little bit more work, I would think, anywhere on a collector or above is potentially a bike route. So if you have a curb extension or a collector or above, that would be a simple way of designating it. And then we might have some definite bike routes that are in the TSP, but anytime you do any widening on a collector or above, you're legally responsible for the bike lane.
It is in that TSP, but when they designed 7th Street, they changed that. Yeah. Collector and above is what I heard, was from a priority kind of perspective.
Yeah, if you're looking at that, because that's more of the hardcore riders. It's not trying to induce the new riders, but they're the people that are out there riding, and they're riding on collectors and above. So that's more of the hardcore cyclists. And then later on, we can start developing alternative bike routes to encourage other riders to promote bicycling. I think that would be a good thing, but that's a whole other issue.
Okay. Thank you for bringing it up. TSE update.
So Kathy and I were looking at the meeting minutes, and I think the last meeting I committed to providing a list, because I knew there was a list of projects in our TSP. I think last meeting I was here, we talked about the fact that the TSP update was moving forward more from a trying to get funding perspective to redo the TSP, right? So, so we went through that update at the last meeting, and one of the things that came up was, well, isn't there a list of projects? And so this is the list of projects that's included in your packet. Kathy and I were looking through it, and it seems like there's a couple of projects that were added by addendum to the TSP, or amendment, I'm not sure what it was called, but that aren't shown on here, but that's just a couple of projects. So in our transportation system plan, which is fairly dated, 2001, there's project numbers. So on the left-hand side of this, there's PP1, R, BR, PP, which is P for pedestrian. There's all these different project numbers and categories. And in the TSP, most of those are listed. The exception would be the Beaver Creek Concept Plan and the Park Place Concept Plan. And I haven't studied this list. I just know that there's cost estimates here, and there's different allocations based on whether or not it would be SDC appropriate or not. And this was updated in 2008 so that we could update our system development charges for transportation. And so I know Nancy and the consultant that worked on this, which I'm not sure if it was Kilson, I'm not sure who it was, but I know we had the same consultant that helped us with it.
It was John Galagucci and Carl Springer, and the taxes involved.
Okay, good. Okay, so I think what started this was the Division Taylor, Malala intersection, and wondering, it is listed in here. It's listed on page. Are these pages numbered, Kathy? They're not really numbered. It's so if you go to the R's, if you look at the number and you go past Beaver Creek concept plan, past Park Place concept plan, and you get to the roadway system plan. You see that sheet? Anyways, R104 is the project number. So it's near really the bottom of the roadway list. And it's talk about Malala Avenue, Taylor Division. Looks like a project cost of $1 million, which I don't know how accurate that is. It sounds like most of these were listed in the original TSP and that they inflated them to 2008 numbers, so that's where the cost is for these. So it's there. I know that's probably one of the more recently discussed projects just because of the school acquisition. But that's about it, and I think I'm not sure what else you were hoping to get out of that particular item. But again, it's good for me to learn some of these things because I have not completely been up to speed with all the history on them. So I find out, there has been some good thought that's gone into some of these projects.
You have to know if that's a completely new list or the projects that have been completed removed from the list.
I think the projects that have been completed have been removed from the list. Yeah.
They had to be because it was the transportation system.
Yeah, they still show up in the old projects still show up in the TSP, but this list that Kathy included, it was more related to, it was a separate document that modified all those things. So, and then this list, I'm not sure if you folks all have copies of this document, but each one of these has a project description in here that's a little more detailed. That talks about whether it's a signal or lane changes or striping changes. It's got all that detail there.
Okay, and construction projects.
Did you see that Nancy Koshner had a citizen involvement committee meeting, and she asked for a list of our summer projects.
That's great, I need to know.
Which is easier than going through it. I mean, you can just check on here. And basically, we're so darn busy. It's
Loaded. Aren't those just transportation projects, or those everything?
No, this is everything, but I think everything has a little bit of transportation in it. So, I can keep doing updated lists like this. I know one thing we have going on tomorrow. We're sending out a mailing on. There's going to be a jug handle open house on the 29th of June. It's 2 weeks from today, and we're sending out 10,000 postcards. So I'm getting that ready. I think that's going to be the first of two open houses that we're going to have this year, and so
Is it going to be at the pioneers?
I'm sorry?
Or is it going to be
That's going to be in here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it's going to be televised. For more information, we have a website, a catchy little name, drughandleproject.com.
Yay.
So, you can get that from the city's website, or you can just go directly there. So anyway, the open house, I think it's from 5 to 7, and they're actually going to specifically invite the neighbors. I thought they were going to invite the people in close proximity to start coming at 4 if they so desire. So, great. 30th, the first informational type meeting.
I had a question about construction projects. At one time, they were saying that Partlow Road was going to be connected to Lafayette, and that corner is being developed. Is that what they're going to do?
It's gonna have a little bit of a jog in the roadway, and they're building that piece right now.
Right.
It's, I think they've struggled with weather as well.
Okay.
And right now they're waiting on there's a stormwater facility that goes right in the new intersection, and it's been manufactured, and concrete takes time to cure. So that was the last delay I heard, was they were waiting on that piece.
Well, I haven't seen it, but my neighbors have talked to me about it.
And we've talked about it in meetings over the years, where the first developer went out of business, and now somebody new, Sladen out of Silverton, has purchased it, and they're finishing the work.
Okay.
Which is good for us.
Okay, yes. Now who's gonna build the homes, because it was slated for 8 or 9 homes in that property also.
I don't know that, but that's an interesting point that kind of relates to the list. The list is about city sponsored, if you will, city managed capital improvement projects. There's a whole nother list of development projects, and often those development projects result in a lot of questions. And we don't always have information related to their schedule or why they're off track or what's taking so long, but we'll try to answer those for you. But that one there in particular has been kind of an up and down. It's nice to see it's moving forward, and they have a good contractor on track. There has been some discussion about short-term closure of Partlow while they kind of make that transition. And I haven't heard the latest thinking on that, but there was some discussion about closing that piece, which would be complicated. Well, it would be disruptive, I guess, not so complicated. It would just be disruptive.
That's also one of those projects where the city is going to reimburse the developer for the city's share of the project.
Because I bet you that project's listed in this.
Yeah, it's probably on this list. The realignment. Okay.
You know what's going on with Warner Milne, and when it will be finished?
Literally, the latest updates I have are on here.
Okay.
And I have the completion in July. I mean, yeah, it is. It's on the second page. Warner Milne Road, Beaver Creek to Malala. Oh, Holcomb? I may not have.
It looks like,
Holcomb. Warner Milne's on here, and it says they have to repave it, do the rain garden, and do the culvert replacement. And some of that's weather dependent. But it's supposed to be done in July. I just did a construction extension on Holcomb. Again, PGE relocated. Now we're waiting for Quest. Then we were waiting for Quest. Maybe Quest has relocated.
actually, the poll came out yesterday.
Okay.
So they took weeks. It was a big hairball.
And the city was very concerned, and they're now looking at franchise agreements, but and now the contractor can't schedule paving until the 1st of July. So we've done a contract extension for them until the end of July. So hopefully they'll be substantially complete by the middle of July.
Okay, any other questions on construction projects? And Kathy put so that's really the end of our agenda. Kathy, as she started mentioning earlier, put the copies of the various different posters that were up during the high-speed rail presentation, and they requested to fill out the survey. ODOT did request that we only fill out the survey once.
Yes.
Once
Yeah.
per customer.
So yeah, Nancy just really wanted to let you know that this conversation at a regional level was happening, and that there was a proposal to actually bypass Oregon City, which has got some big questions wrapped around that, but whether or not they could actually do that through a jurisdiction like Tualatin or Lake Oswego. Milwaukee would like to see that. At least that's the consensus Nancy left me with. They want to be included. They want to be included. But I know the thinking when we were at Lake Oswego was they weren't interested in more rail going through the old electric rail route. But I guess those things can change. I'm not sure. But so anyway, I think Nancy was just providing this as information. And yeah, she asked that the survey questions be completed. And I didn't hear just one. I didn't hear her say, did she say just one? Copy that? Or?
The representative from ODOT said that at the meeting.
Oh, okay.
She told us that if we'd already filled one out, not fill out another one, she would prefer one because
Oh, I
that was
see.
an ODOT request.
Oh, so it wasn't one per committee for the committee?
No,
Okay,
one
okay.
per person.
Yeah, okay. So don't load up the ballot box, right?
Yes. That's what they're concerned about.
And then the other item was the update on the vehicle registration fee. Did that go out? That went out as well.
Yes.
So, again, thinking that you might be interested in this kind of information, so I watched the video of which county commissioner, Lynn Peterson did the presentation on this one, and I did pull down some notes. I don't know if any of you got to watch it or, it's good viewing video, but she indicated that the bridge was built in 1927. I thought that was interesting, and at the time she said they built it on the cheap, and so she said it was at capacity at the time that they built that bridge. Now, 1927 kind of surprises me if that were the case, but they indicate that currently Clackamas County, the county uses that bridge 60% of the time, and it's projected to use it 70% of the time. So the other 40 and soon to be 30% would be everybody else. So we're big users of the Selwood Bridge, and you don't use it, Kathy? No.
I don't use it. The gravel, but
Well, I have a question about that.
Okay.
So we're also looking at the Oregon City Western Bridge going down and getting fixed. And I'm pretty sure that the Clackamas County is big users of that bridge also. So will that money also be used for fixing that bridge?
I think that money is a different pot of money. It's STIP money, is from what I understand. And so this vehicle registration fee that would be an increase would be specific to this Selwood Bridge change. Okay. And what I heard from the presentation was Clackamas County was given an exception from everybody else in the state, or I think there were three agencies that were allowed to add this, because if you remember, we voted on this measure not too long ago, the vehicle registration fee changes, and the legislature somehow it was changed such that we couldn't make those changes until 2013. We couldn't change the vehicle registration fee. Well, Clackamas County and I think two other agencies got exceptions from that, but they had to be for specific things, and Clackamas County's was for the Selwood Bridge. And so Clackamas County can implement a $5, right now they're looking at a $5 vehicle registration fee increase, and all the money collected from that would be dedicated to the Selwood Bridge piece. Okay, and that Selwood Bridge package is made up of several agency contributions, so it's not just Clackamas County that's paying for that. So Multnomah County, for instance, is paying the lion's share of that at 127 million. And the federal government, she mentioned 51 million that was already approved, and that they were going for a second approval of that. I missed this number. I think it was 40 million. And then Portland and their gas tax revenues was going to cover another 100 million. And ODOT was going to cover 30 million and most of that 30 million was going to be only available for the Highway 43 side of the interchange. So they're talking about doing interchange improvements there too. And that's because that's the only really ODOT connection. They don't have, it's not, the bridge isn't their facility, but there's 30 million included in that. And then Clackamas County's contribution would be 22 million, which was, I don't know if all those numbers added up, but the total project is 330 million. And so Clackamas County's portion of that was 7%. So,
not bad if they have 70% of the use.
What's that?
Not bad if they use it 70% of the use.
Right, that was the big point, was that's a pretty good deal for Clackamas County. And so anyway, I think I mentioned after 2013, I didn't mention this, after 2013, other agencies across the state have the ability to increase their vehicle registration fees, but this period of time between 2010 and 2013, all of those collected fees are dedicated for, in Clackamas County, are dedicated for this bridge. And she mentioned some other things in her presentation about after 2013 and the fact that the way the House bill was written, it was that those funds that were collected after 2013 would be split between the county and other agencies on a 60-40 split, 60 being the county share and 40 being the other cities, but that equation could change based on a prioritized project list. So she was asking the city commission to provide input on what kind of projects might that vehicle registration fee increase be contributed towards. And I wasn't clear exactly how that process would happen. I'm not really sure what to do with that little piece, but it was interesting to hear.
Yes.
Probably, I don't know, maybe our transit corridor work might be a contributing piece, or TSP.
I'm sure we can find some place.
We've got a long list of projects here.
Yeah.
It's a minute.
And one thing on the last page of the handout, at the bottom of the chart, it shows all the contributions. The cities closest to the bridge will contribute the largest share.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how that statement compares with, if you look at Milwaukee and West Lynn, doesn't it be closer to
yeah.
bridge than Oregon City?
Yeah, Gladstone.
I think it's a generalized statement. I sat there and tried to figure that out. It's a generalized statement. What do you think, Jonathan?
They actually.
Okay,
Yeah.
at a $5 flat rate, I don't know how you get that.
No.
Okay. No, they're saying essentially, yeah.
Okay, so it's kind of,
But I can't figure out what are the green and what are the blue.
The blue is areas outside the metro area. And the question, that same question was asked of Commissioner Peterson, and she said that it just kind of it worked out distance-wise. No, what did she say? These numbers are based on population, so the total dollar amount is truly based on population. The statement, I think, is it's inaccurately represented because obviously Lake Oswego's closer to the bridge than Oregon City is. So really, I just think that last line is misleading.
Especially if you're doing $5, it would have to, per registration, it would have to be population based. They couldn't do it by.
yeah, I just didn't understand how the two statements.
Well, that sounds fair, but it just doesn't jive.
Yeah. You must be a brilliant thinker because that's what the mayor asks as well.
Okay, any other questions or concerns?
question related to the last meeting, I apologize that I wasn't here and probably had discussion. This is related to the regional transportation system plan for Metro that the city was asked to comment on the transportation corridors. And Nancy had provided the comments at the last meeting, and they were, I thought so good that I really couldn't add a whole lot to them, and so I know we had talked about how can the committee support these recommendations, and I don't know if we're still interested in writing just the general letter of support, because my original thoughts were that, you know, we needed to have more definition on some of those deficiencies, and it seemed like the city did a really nice job of calling those out that were missing. So I'm just wondering, is there any further action desired?
You know, Kathy draft up a letter.
Originally, but my original intent was kind of this was diverted because of the work that the city did. So the offer's still there. If it's useful, I can draft the letter and send it around to people and comment. Still, if you think that it would have a positive effect, otherwise, I don't want to.
Do you know if there was an RTP? Is the period over in which we can submit comments?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So it's just a matter of, you know, my thought was that, you know, just to kind of say that, you know, the city has worked with the Transportation Advisory Committee and that, you know, they really supported the recommendations that were presented, and that's all I can really do at this point, and I don't know if that's something that would have any effect or not. If it doesn't, then there's
Well, particularly after we're already past the deadline.
that was the public comment period. This would be kind of more just to kind of, I guess, reinforce the city's position. But I don't know if that does.
Well, I think Nancy's recommendation went to Metro, and they were representing the city's wishes after it's closed. I mean, the letter would just be more of an internal document saying that the TAC approves Nancy's recommendation, but I don't think we really.
Okay, but I kind of decided it wasn't really a value that, so I didn't do anything.
Oh, Nancy's got some of that.
Yeah. Well, if there is something that we can do to, try to volunteer.
Okay, anything else?
I got one little question.
Yes, sir.
Has to do with fairly close to here. Lynn Avenue, coming down the hill, it's 35 miles an hour until you get to the Blake line. Where does the 35 miles an hour start going up the hill? When you get next to Pearl, you got two different places. You're going down the hill, 35 miles an hour, almost to Jackson Street. You're going up the hill, there's that 35 mile an hour sign until just before Pearl. I can't remember East Street, I think it's one it's by. So it means if you get a policeman who'll give you a ticket for going up the hill, one direction for going too fast, and down the hill you'd be fine.
I don't know.
where it's.
I'll have to look. I mean, man, we've studied. There's so many speed signs on Lynn Avenue. I think one time I counted there was like 25.
There's one down there at close to Jackson, let's say.
It surprises me we missed that after we had such
Yes.
They're never directly across from each other. Like, how far apart do you think?
About 2 blocks, maybe a quarter mile.
Yeah, they are.
We didn't go around that.
I can
You gotta go through that.
You need to hang around, but I'll look at this.
I just don't know. People sometimes just, they get excited, they want to start going 35 down in row.
Well, the speed trailer's up new.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah, right, it is. We'll buy it. We have another one too now, right?
One side of the street pays higher taxes than the other.
There you go.
These guys,
Somehow that pays off. Been nice try. We are adjourned.
Okay.
Thank you for coming.
You have to go.
No problem.